Welcome to the Empowering Choices podcast. My name is Joshua.
I am Lucas.
And I'm Eric.
Eric and Lucas are licensed professional counselors, and today's title is Missing Monumental Moments, which sounds like something I don't want to miss.
I hear you tripping over your own tongue as you try to get that out.
Yes, the missing monumental moments. And we even talked about making it Missing Your Minor's Monumental Moments at one point.
So this kind of continues our theme of stuff that, Eric, you had found about regrets parents had. Was it regrets parents had?
Regrets that parents had.
Yeah. So like they did like raised their children and their children had become adults and they went, oh, poop, I missed out on this stuff. I don't know. Did you want to start out with story time? You've got a story in here that may gonna give us a foundation to launch off of.
Well, one of these pieces that I thought highlighted this really well is I saw years ago an interview with the singer Lionel Richie, who is now one of the judges on American Idol. And the interviewer was asking, Lionel about his daughter, Nicole, and about kind of her wild days. And he very respectfully, kind of stopped the interviewer, if I remember right, and said, I have to take responsibility for that in a lot of different ways. And the interviewer went, well, how can you take responsibility for her being, kind of wild at times? And he said, I was not the best dad. My career was at its height, and she was, in ballet, and she had ballet recitals. And, I didn't go to all of her recitals or many of her recitals at all. And it came down to this: go to her ballet recital, sing for the Queen of England. Go to her ballet recital, sing for the Queen of England. Mm-hmm. And I always chose sing for the Queen.
I always chose.
He goes, I am responsible for, a lot of how she was during that time.
There's a quote that I'm going to butcher. I don't remember the exact details, but it was like, children don't get in the way of the important things in your life. They are the important things in your life. And that's like, I regularly think about that because I have the tendency to be like, oh man, my kids are getting in the way of whatever. But like, it's definitely the reality of like, at the end of the day, what are you going to have left? Right? Like that hobby that you wanted to do or that stupid YouTube video that you wanted to watch is not the thing that you're going to think about later on. I mean, like Lionel Richie was just saying, he was saying that he should have missed performing for the Queen. He was reflecting on that and going, that wasn't worth it in light of my daughter. I mean, what a statement to make.
It's huge. And it makes me think of something that I heard William Shatner say. In kind of the beginning of the height of his career, he was out on the road and doing some different things, and he had gotten an invitation to go to New York for a great big Christmas, type of celebration, a very prestigious type of a thing to be invited to. And he had promised his kids he would be home for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And they gave him several invitations. They put the pressure on, and he continued to say no. And he said no, and he went home and completely passed that thing up and had the Christmas with his kids because, that was more important to him, and he said, looking back, I don't know why I just didn't buy tickets for everybody and take them, but
in hindsight, I could have done this differently,
but he chose to go home and, be with kids, even though he was being invited to sort of perform for the Queen.
Right, yeah, not the Queen of England, but something kind of big.
It was a big thing, in his world.
I'm thinking of, and it's not exactly the same thing, but it's just kind of looking back on some of the things in your life. It was a little clip of Mike Tyson looking at all of his his belts and stuff, and he's talking to the interviewer, and they're like, what do you think about these now? And he flips one off the table, and he goes, trash. Doesn't matter.
He almost knocked the table over.
Yeah, and it's just that. I don't know.
These don't mean anything.
And
Nothing.
And I don't know if necessarily like Mike Tyson is the kind of parent you want to be, but like sometimes things aren't as important as we think they are.
Well, I mean, look at him, look at that. And I mean, I don't know any bad stories about Mike Tyson being, a bad parent in any way, and he's right there going in comparison, it's my kids that matter the most, and I don't know how that played out at that time. But yeah, he definitely has a different perspective on what those awards and things mean, and greatly values his family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think most of us aren't being asked to do some of those really cool things.
No, they're good examples.
Yeah,
though.
but I have met lots of parents who really struggle with that. They're trying to advance in their career, and they feel the pressure of I need to do this, I have to be there, I have to do this, and then they're having to pick that or their child's basketball game, and it's a real struggle for some people. And so, is there like how do you balance that in terms of if I decided to become a parent, should I now to some level sacrifice some of the things I was once striving for personally and professionally, or can I balance that, or do I just have to decide which one's more important?
You should quit your job entirely and
you have to kind of look at the landscape, because when you chose to have children, you chose to make them a priority. At least that's what it should be. When we choose to have an animal, people will always say, well, you've got to feed them, and you've got to walk them, and you've got to groom them, and you've got to bathe. They list out all the things that come with owning a dog.
And all those things are true of children too.
Right. But it never gets listed out.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%.
Taylor Tomlinson has a great little skit that she does with in her comedy where she's talking about that very same thing. At the hospital, they'll just hand you the baby and there you go. There's nothing.
They give you more instructions at the Humane Society.
They do.
About buying the cat.
Exactly. And the takeaway, from that is that my train just went right off the track, and I just completely lost my thought right there. So somebody help me back on the track here.
Nope, not coming.
Not
coming there.
Yeah.
The way I help people get back on the track is usually shutting up and letting them come to it.
Yeah, there we go. So, you talked, but it still came. And so one of the things that I know, like back in my early 20s when I worked at a grocery store, there was a woman there, and she had been a part of the store forever and had raised 2 kids, and her youngest was now in his last year, his senior year. He was a great athlete. His sister was a great athlete. She had never gotten off to be able to go see one of their games.
She'd been working.
And it's not that she hadn't asked for it. It's that the boss would never let her off to go and watch her kids. And I don't know what the beef was between them. And so, I mean, one of the things on a lower level of being able to make, these events is, for instance, if I have a parent who will send me a message and say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that my kid's track meet is today. What should I do? And
they're saying, I have a session with you that conflicts with.
It's on a session day. It's at a session time. And my response to them is generally, it sounds like you're going to have some sports therapy today. You should definitely go and see your kid, and, a lot of parents have different kids and multiple kids that are in sports. But those types of settings and those types of different things are very important to the kids. My dad came to one of my games growing up. And
ever.
It was a basketball game. It was one, and it wasn't that he couldn't do it.
It wasn't that he couldn't have gotten work off.
He totally could have. When I was in high school, I played on the football team, and I was a starting right guard at 125 pounds. And I could move guys up to 300 pounds. I thought, well, this'll get him to come and see.
Yeah. Why wouldn't that catch his attention?
And he never came. you know, and that had a very big impact on my self-confidence or wanting to do things in connection with the blood bond. And I went, yeah, screw it. If he doesn't care, why do I care?
Right. Why am I going to,
You know, there's a direct reflection in there.
Right.
What more could you have done if he'd been there? And not that, you know, you would have necessarily gone on to be an NFL football player, but.
No, football probably wouldn't have been my thing. But when I was up at the college my junior year and I was just dorking around after the Olympics had gone and I was going to teach myself to do a somersault dive and I got
off the high, whatever high platform.
Yep. Well, no, I was on the regular board. So it's lower to the water. So, you know, it's going to be less time to be able to do that spin or that somersault. And I remember getting out of the water and there was a woman who was there in, you know, sweats. And she just looked down at me and she goes, "Stop, just stop. You are making me hurt."
Because you were not necessarily
back flop, belly flop.
You're making me hurt.
And she started to move away and then she came back and she goes, "Wait, what are you even trying to do?" And so I was like, well, I just saw the Olympics and I thought this would be fun.
Absolutely.
And she goes, "Are you serious about it?" And I said, well, yeah. I mean, I'm here and I'm in pain. Isn't that serious enough? And she goes, "Okay, listen, how about if I give you a couple of tips?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, that sounds fun. I've got nothing else to do.
I'm literally here to do this."
And so she started giving me tips. And I would go through it and I would do it. And she would give me more tips and I would go through it and I would do it. And within a half an hour, I was doing a perfect dive, jump up, somersault, extend, very little splash. And she was like, "Oh my God, you have got so much talent. Who are you?"
Right. Wait.
Yeah. And then she goes, "Wait, no, what grade are you in?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm a junior in high school." She goes, "Okay." Or no, I think I was a senior at that time. I was a senior. She goes, "I am the head diving coach for this university. You need to come see me next year."
Right, come see me next year, yeah.
And I walked away going, "Man, that felt good." And then I never did it again. And it did come back to that. So my brother was a huge basketball player. He could walk on to any university court outside in our town, and even as a junior, and there would be entire softball league teams out in the fields that would stop to watch him come over and play. And it was amazing. You just see people would just in the crowd, they'd be like, "Paul's playing, Paul's playing, Paul's playing, Paul's playing." I'm like, what the heck is going on? And games are shutting down and crowds are coming and people are coming over. And I'm like, him?
Right, yeah. Who's that guy?
Why do you guys want to see him play? And he was a really talented ball player, but it never translated inside to like the high school, college type arenas. And I think it was the same thing. Our dad didn't have he didn't put the attention. It wasn't important to him.
It wasn't important to him. I mean, and that may be the takeaway of like, your kids should be important to you, and then the behaviors that you take should flow out of that. Can you attend every single one of their special events? Maybe not, but should it be important to you?
And that's the key, is that your kids will understand through the relationship that you have with them that it's important to you. And so you're going to teach them how life does come in and how things have to get readjusted, and they'll understand that and they'll take away from that.
So, okay, let me just ask a question. So there are some people listening who are in a situation where they have some flexibility. It's a 2-parent household. They have some things. There are some people who are single parents that I talk to that literally are struggling just to keep food on the table, and they have to work to do those things, and they have to work a job that's at night or that's at an inconvenient time, and they're going to say, it's either go to my kids' games or my kids aren't going to have food and the supplies and the things they need or even be able to pay to play the sports. What do you do with someone like that? How can that parent still show their kid they care? Should that parent
Okay.
abandon their job and go to the stuff? Like what do you do if you're in that situation?
Well, you remember the woman that I worked with at the store?
At the grocery store.
That's that exact situation, and she just could never go. She
Yeah.
could never go.
She
and
needed
see
the job,
play.
and she needed to keep her boss's
And
good
she needed to keep
graces.
that.
And
Yeah.
If we're talking, and at that time, we're looking back in the 90s.
Right.
So there were parents who would come to different events, and you could tell that they weren't able to come very often, and they worked very, hard labor jobs. They would come covered in the glory of their job.
right, sure, dirt, whatever.
And they would sit there in the stands as often as they could. What that meant was either someone had to cover for them, or they had to work a double, or they had to take a bit of a cut in the money that month. Now let's move to today. Today has this wonderful thing. It's this beautiful T word. It's called technology. Okay. Now, will people videotape those, games? And is it much easier to be able to get those videos, and you come home and you can, what do they call that, to put it up on the airplay it up on the screens, and you can do the popcorn, and you can be able to watch your child.
Right.
Is it going to be absolutely the same thing? No, but if you're doing the best you can, and your kids are seeing that, and you have that relationship, then they're going to understand that.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean that you may not still want to do old school and see if you can get someone to cover, or be able to work a double, or look for a different job at times? All of that's old school. All of that counts.
Yeah.
And so you want to be able to work with that. You're more apt to have vacation time, in today's world than 30 years ago that you could utilize for things like that. And so, like I know a dad right now, and he has 4 kids, and he is in that situation where he is completely raising these 4 kids.
Single dad.
Wow.
Yeah, tough.
And the way that he works this is that every semester, so it's going to be quarter, because they're in grade school, or trimester, whichever that is. One of the kids gets to play a sport because that's all he can afford. And so he helps them narrow down, what is the sport that you want to play.
So it's kind of like one kid gets to play one sport a year, and they cycle.
Not a year.
A year.
But because, semesters for, high school, but back in grade school, I think you still have trimesters. So basically you've got, the fall, the winter, the spring, and the summer sports. So all of his kids will get to play a sport every year, and all of them will go and watch the games together.
Oh, okay. They'll go watch the one person who's playing. There you go.
And so that's the way they have been able to work with that, and now's a great time because his kids are all grade schoolers. And so they're just getting into, what do I like? What sports would I really like to be able to engage in?
Yeah, and that's a really cool idea. I can't think of any parent who would turn it down if somebody said, "Hey, would you just mind to record this game for me so I can watch my son play later or my daughter play," and then just have them send you that. And then, you kind of recreate that moment. And so that is a pretty cool thing now that everyone has a camera in their pocket. Just take advantage of it. So I think that's all some really fascinating things, and obviously lots of different situations people find themselves in, but making some priorities and some efforts to be at those monumental events and things in your kids'
Monumental
life.
moments, Josh.
Monumental moments.
You got to stick with the theme there.
It pays off. So, hey, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you would leave a comment or put a like or subscribe or kind of whatever from the platform that you're listening to it on. And then make sure to check out our website at empoweringchoices.community, where we have a lot of courses and additional information. And we will see you on the next episode.